All right, let's bring her in. She is a couples therapist based out of Chicago. She's been a licensed therapist for 20 years. She is at Amy on Relationships on Instagram and TikTok. It is Amy Lombardi. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to say that one of the cool things about social media is, you know how the algorithm works in that once you start consuming videos about a certain topic, you just get fed a bunch of videos on that topic in your For You page. And that was how I came across you. You just started popping up on my For You page in regards to this season was the first season. You said about 9 months ago, you started rolling out content for the first time about a television show, and you decided to cover Love is Blind season 9. And I just started seeing a lot of your posts, and I was like, this woman clearly knows what she's talking about. She's very ingrained in this. She went to school for this. So it's just really good stuff. And I, reached out, wanted to have you on, but I wanted to first off let you introduce yourself to my audience. Tell them, and I said you've been a therapist for like 20 years now, but just tell people where you study, where you came from, and kind of a little bit of your background on yourself.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm originally from Chicago, but I actually spent 27 years in Texas. So I started out in a career in finance, didn't like that, and I went to graduate school in Texas, in the Dallas area.
Where?
In University of North Texas.
Oh, UNT.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I started my profession in kind of general therapy and then quickly figured out that I had a passion for working with couples. So I've been doing this actually 25 years. So I started working with couples right from the beginning, but felt not super qualified. So I don't know if anyone out here has heard of the Gottmans. So I'm trained by John and Julie Gottman, and I'm trained by Terry Real, who are some of the leading names in couples therapy. And I only see couples, and I've been seeing couples for 25 years. So what I do is a little bit unique. I'm back in Chicago now. And so I work with couples who have been really, really struggling, and they come and meet with me for 2 days. So we have like an intensive Monday and Tuesday. We try to get to the bottom of their issues, sort everything out, and then we move forward from there. So I've been doing that. The last 5 years. So it's a little bit different than what others do, but I have always been connected to Love is Blind. It's kind of my guilty pleasure. I've watched all the seasons of it, and I can't believe I'm being interviewed about it at this point because, as a therapist, you hear so many heavy things. So for me, Love is Blind I'm excited when it comes out. It's something that I can watch that's pretty light. So I've always enjoyed it. So I started doing content at the beginning of this year, and my content manager said, I think you might want to do something on Love is Blind. So our first video went out for this season this year.
You probably watch this show and you're just like, my gosh, I want to sit all these couples on my couch and just be like, hey, we need to go over a few things here. But okay, so let's get into this season. And we're obviously, I don't want to spend too much time in the pods. Obviously, yesterday the finale aired. Everybody is very well aware of what has happened with all these couples. And for the first time in Love is Blind history, we had 0 marriages. And I can't say any of us are really shocked. You had put it out early on a couple of your videos. I have been talking about it all season long, just saying like, look, I'd be shocked if any of them were married. I didn't know any of the spoilers, but they were out there. I avoided them. But I want to just go back, and we're just going to break down the 6 couples that did get engaged. And I want to start off with the first one that dropped off, which was Casey and Patrick, because for a couple that got engaged but then didn't go to Mexico, and then they've both given interviews since then, we're kind of getting a little bit more of a picture. But when you saw all that go down with the way Casey was trying to break up with him, but it seemed like she was trying to also spare his feelings, because telling someone you're breaking up with them but then straddling them and continuing to kiss them but then basically ghost them when you get back to Denver. Clearly she was going about it all wrong. When you were watching that and then maybe subsequently heard their interviews and what they said, what was your assessment of Casey and Patrick's breakup? And are you under the impression, like a lot of us are, that it really seemed to come about that it was a physical thing with her, and that once she saw him, she realized, I can't get there physically with him?
Yeah, I think, I was really sad when Anna left, just to back up a little bit. I was
Yeah.
sad when Anna left because I thought that her and Patrick would be a really good match for each other. And I was like literally screaming at the TV when he proposed to Casey because it was such a bad fit. I feel like it was such a bad fit from the beginning. And I could see his wheels turning, that the quality of this relationship was not something that really meshed with him. But yet, after she did that kind of sexual interaction with him, I was very disappointed that he went down that route. And, I don't know her motivation from the beginning. I know she talked about that she had a boyfriend kind of back and forth and a boyfriend going in there. So I don't know if this was just for the attention. But yeah, I think at some point she just said, I can't go through with this because the physical piece is not there.
And, it goes against basically the concept of the show. And I almost felt like, and we've seen it through the course of other seasons, you can't sit there and describe yourself detail by detail physically to the person on the other side of the wall. But there always is some sort of back and forth where they're asking questions so they can get a little bit about what that person is like.
Right.
Because, I mean, we can even backtrack here real quick. Let's be honest. The concept of this show is utterly ridiculous because I don't think anybody in their right mind would ever agree to marry somebody that they have never physically laid eyes on. We kind of accept this.
Yeah,
so,
and 4 weeks is just so not enough time to see the things that you need to see in order to make that kind of decision.
Exactly. And it's just, look, we understand they're getting engaged because that's what the show wants you to do. But if this was an actual real thing, this wouldn't be happening in real life. You wouldn't be proposing to someone you've never seen before. I've seen people, start relationships without ever having met before, and, the online stuff and FaceTiming. But to propose to somebody who you've talked to in a pod for 10 days, it's utterly ridiculous. So we have to get past that when we watch this show.
We want to believe in it, but it's really not realistic. Yeah.
It's not at all. And the people that have been successful in this show and are still married, and some of them are popping out kids, they're the exception, not the rule. And they've lucked out. For whatever reason, it's worked out for them. But we know that most of the time this isn't going to work out. So with Casey, she was really digging to find out what his ethnicity was. And it seems like, and even when she said, like, he asked her, have you dated an Asian guy? No. Yeah. And then she was trying to almost convince herself that didn't matter to her. But when she saw him, and even though they kissed all the time, you can almost tell sometimes when all they do is kiss, it's because they have nothing to say to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I just rewatched the scene today, actually. And you could see his discomfort when she was pressing for that information. And I'm sad that he let that boundary get crossed, because the idea of the show is not to know the physical part of it. But I just, when she did the breakup, it was, no. So it's okay that we're not going to Cabo. Yeah, but we're still not broken up. Yeah, no. And it was just such an awful scene to watch. And my heart did break for Patrick, although I really wish he would have. I think he just was not trusting his gut. And I think he was a bit devastated when Anna left, and then went for the next thing that seemed to make a match. He really wanted to make a connection and tried to fit kind of a square peg into a circle.
And I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to this show, when we're watching, we also have to understand these people know, like, hey, if I get engaged, there's a good chance that I'm going to be one of the couples they do follow to the honeymoon phase, or whatever they want to call it, the getaway.
Right.
And that means that I can last, and which gives me opportunities on other shows, Perfect Match, The Challenge. So there's always that in the background. And it seems like Casey, for one, certainly was someone that probably fits that mold. And I think once Anna left, Patrick got into a point where he's just like, I just want to be with somebody.
And I think so too. I think he just wanted to so badly be in love and find that person. And it was really telling to me when she was asking him, well, how did you end up on this show? And he's like, well, I signed up. I wanted to do it. And she's like, oh, they didn't reach out to you. I do believe he was on it for the right reasons. I really do. I just think that Anna thing threw him off, and he wanted to make a connection.
Yeah. Like he felt he had one. Then he's like, well, I don't want to just leave. Let me try and build with somebody else, and probably overlooked
Exactly.
a lot of things.
To me, he overlooked a lot of red flags. The boyfriend being there, her kind of pressing his boundaries for more information and making this really about looks.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the whole point of the show is to make it not about looks, but ultimately, I think a lot of these couples, not even just this season, any past season, a lot of it comes down to how many times have we seen couples on the show just be like, the physical attraction wasn't there when I saw them. And
absolutely. And it's so important. It's like, if you don't have mutual attraction, it's dead in the water. It's not going to work. And we'll talk about another couple where I think tried to build it, but it just was not working.
And obviously you working with couples, I'm sure over the course of 25 years, you have worked with couples. And I've always found this interesting, of couples that clearly on the day of the wedding, head over heels for each other, they love each other. But then 5 years into the marriage, 10 years into the marriage, 15 years into the marriage, you don't look like you did on your wedding day.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody does fall out of attraction with their significant other. What has been when you've dealt with a couple like that, which I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
What lessons do you give them? What do you say to them when it's just like, and he or her says to you, the physical attraction is just not there anymore?
Yeah. Well, and let me kind of back up. I think the difference is you've got all these years to build, like we had children together, our wedding day, and these people don't have that time to have the other pieces of connection. They just have the physical. When that door opens, they just have the physical. So, we're going to change. And I think you'd be surprised. I don't have a ton of people who fall into that category. You would think it would be more. It's a very difficult conversation to have, but we have to have it because we have to be honest. And that's what happens with a lot of these couples, is they're not honest with the difficult conversations. So we have to have it. And it's about living in an appreciation of what the person brings to the table and understanding that they're not going to bring everything you want. And with time, we're all going to look different than we started at the beginning. So, is that physical change, or that lack of physical attraction, something that you can grieve and move past and accept the good parts of the relationship that still remain? And some people can, and some people can't.
In the ones that you've dealt with, what is the percentage that were able to move past it? Out of curiosity.
I would say the majority of them were able to move past it. Yeah. I mean, once they could be honest about it and they could talk about it in a safe space for such a difficult and heated topic, then they were able to move past it.
Yeah. I mean, saying that to your spouse, probably for the first time.
Yeah. It's a very hard discussion. It's
out loud. Yeah. And then the spouse takes it, and in the times that you did hear it, was that the first time the spouse was hearing it from their partner?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes, because, I tell all the couples I work with, is the thing that's going to get in the way is if we're not being honest with each other. And it's terrible to look at your partner and say, I'm not attracted anymore. And honestly, Steve, there's usually more to it. Like if you ask them about their background story, you ask them about how their parents acted, there's something there that happened before they even met this person that's getting in the way. So we have to have an understanding of that. My mom was always, talking about her diets and her fitness, and I don't feel like I have worth. And now I'm with someone who's heavy. So trying to understand it better is really important.
Yeah. And obviously that would affect, with the attraction, if one partner says the physical attraction isn't there anymore, I would think that would lead to much less sex, if not just a sexless marriage, which then causes obviously problems, especially if the other one hasn't lost the attraction and wants sex to continue. And they're like, I'm not getting sex. And then that's going to draw some major friction, I would.
Yeah. And I say there's a couple, like most of the couples I see, their intimacy is really broken, because if you're not being honest, if you're not having the hard discussions, if you're sitting in resentment because you haven't figured things out, the intimacy is going to be affected. So, I mean, you have to have those conversations with each other, for sure.
For a couple whose intimacy is broken, is that something to where you've been able to, maybe not all of them, but have you been able to fix it to where you could get their intimacy in their relationship back on track?
The majority of the time. Yeah, I would say the majority of the time. Because once we start having those conversations and we start getting the resentment out of the way. Say for years, I've been mad at you because, you haven't been as helpful with the kids as I want you to be, or you've been spending too much money. And all of a sudden we can talk about these things. We can be honest. We can make agreements. We can build trust around those. We can start connecting. And once we start connecting, we can start being intimate again. So yes, I'm not going to say in every client situation, but yes, intimacy can be restored like you would not believe. Absolutely.
Yeah. And these couples have to want to repair their marriage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just think like with this experiment, like you were saying, you don't have time to build those other good things. You've had a week, 10 days, and all of a sudden that door opens and you see someone that you're not attracted to, and you see them all do that kind of squirmish, like, yeah, and it's like, oh, they're not into that person. They have only built 10 days.
Yeah. So I want to move on to the two couples who didn't make it before wedding day. And that's Joe and Madison and Nick and Annie, because there was something that you said on your TikTok that I thought was really good. And it talked about Madison and Annie, because I don't want to say they were exactly the same, but these were two women that really seemed to put way too much validation into what their men thought of them. And it was almost getting to a point where, I know a lot of people jumping down Joe's throat, and he acted like a complete ass in Mexico. He was drunk. I mean, he was acting like a complete drunk fool. Yeah. And then, Annie was drunk as well on quite a few. It seemed like every time that she was speaking to Nick, she was drunk. Yeah. And, but they also, both Madison and Annie had this thing where they really seemed to put too much of their happiness had to be in the validation of their men saying what they wanted them to say. Or in Joe's case, he wasn't saying what she wanted him to say. So talk about that, of what you had said in your TikTok about Madison.
Yeah, I think they both needed so much validation and not having that like confidence in who they were as people and women. So they're seeking their value through these relationships. And as soon as these relationships start to look a little bit rocky, then they kind of panic and they need that affirmation, which, to both those guys' credit, they didn't go through and walk down the aisle with them. I do see them as a little bit different, and I appreciated at the end of the breakup I have heard since that was kind of a fake breakup scene between Joe and Madison. Yeah. But, I appreciated that she handled it with a bit more class and respect at the end than Annie did. But I mean, I think I did a video on like giving advice to them, and I just want them to have confidence in themselves, because if you don't need someone, if you don't need someone to give you all those things, and it seems like they were getting, especially Madison, she was getting her validation through sexy time. As long as we're being intimate, then everything's okay. And sex doesn't translate to that kind of connection often. And so I think she was putting it in, she was putting her stock in false things. What made me nervous about those two is they really didn't have questions. Like their partner would ask them, are you worried about anything? Is there anything you're not certain about? Nope. I don't need any questions. I'm all, I don't need to ask anything. I'm all good. And that is just so not realistic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, and the other thing, Joe is very similar to Casey in that we could all see it as viewers. And not only that, he was literally saying it to the camera, normally date. He didn't use the word petite. I know that. He said normally date thinner women. But it's okay. She's beautiful and I love her. But when you have to throw that caveat in there, it's laying the groundwork for you're not attracted to her.
Yeah.
And
it
was clear.
I think there were a couple scenes I feel like he tried to get there. But then it wouldn't last. So like in the hot tub in the beginning, in the pool or the hot tub, I feel like he tried to get there with her. And then when she met his family, I feel like he was trying to get there with her. But inevitably it just, you from the beginning, if you don't have it, it's hard to make that, to create that. And then, I think that her behavior, like one of the things about Joe is he said he was in a 5-year relationship that was awful. And if I'm Madison, one of my first questions is, what have you done to heal that? Otherwise you're just going to get into that situation again. So I think Joe was just freaked out.
Yeah, he certainly acted like it, especially on tux fitting day and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then we have Annie and Nick. And for the longest time, Nick in that couple was, quote unquote, I guess, the villain to the audience, because people had plenty of opinions about Nick, the stories that he told about his childhood.
Yeah.
Has a lot of people saying, we all know what everyone is saying about Nick and has been saying about Nick all season.
Yeah.
But it turned into Annie kind of ended up becoming the villain, because this is a woman who had a fiance sitting right across from her telling her, I don't want to be married to you. Marriage is not something that's going to happen.
Right.
1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. You can't make 1 + 1 = 3. And she's like, watch me. And she's like, no, you can't do this. Like,
you can't force that. You can't. Yeah. You know what? I did not like the way Nick handled the things in the pods with Kate. Yeah. I didn't like the way that he handled that situation. I remember watching it thinking like, this is not a good situation. And then as time went on, I really gained some respect for him. I think he was a good communicator with her. And at the end, he really held his boundaries with her. And, he had told her multiple times what was getting in the way, what was bothering him. And her behavior I think her behavior was just enough for him. Now, one of the things I was really careful about in everything that I posted is I do think it's dangerous to diagnose people that you've never seen, to label them as an alcoholic or gay or narcissistic or borderline, these things that we were hearing. Yeah. And so, I don't think it's terribly uncommon for, as a mom of a young man, I don't think it's terribly uncommon for a mom to want to see their son dating and, wonder why they're not dating and ask questions about it. So that comment about his mom didn't really mean a lot to me, to be honest with you.
I think when it got to Nick, I think a lot of people kind of, the way he went about it in the pods, if we were to go back to Nick in the pods with Kate and Annie, it just seemed like he was somebody that wanted some clout out of this, wanted to be engaged. And he was just he literally told Kate and Annie essentially the same exact thing. I am in love with you. And it's just, when somebody does that in the pods, it seems like, hey, I just want to throw the net out there and catch at least one of these fish,
Very true. Very true. And then I feel like the way he handled Kate was really he really gaslit her. I think he just realized he had more of a chance with Annie. And so he kind of threw Kate under the bus to make himself feel better. So I really didn't have a lot of respect for him at the beginning, but it wasn't for that reason of the comment that the mom made or anything like that. But I was impressed with the way he communicated as things went on and things started to fall apart for them. I was impressed with the way he communicated.
Especially when you're dealing with somebody who was, let's face it, she became insufferable in terms of being drunk, clearly, both times that she was having these conversations with him, and just repeating the same thing over and over. When you're continuing to tell somebody, well, you don't love me as much as I love you, I will marry you tomorrow, I love you so much, and you don't love me. He was saying the right things back. Like, what do you want me to say back? I'm telling you I love you. What else do you need? But it's not as much as I love you. Okay.
Well, and that really triggered, that was really a big thing for him. And I tell my clients, grown-up adults don't like to be told what they feel and what they think. And the fact that she kept telling him, you don't, you do, you don't love me as much as this. And he was very clear that was not landing with him. And she just kept doing it. And I watched a little bit back today, and she said at one point, I am the most worried about sabotaging this any relationship. She was talking to girls in the house, I think. And she said, I'm more worried about my self-sabotage. So that tells me, and I don't know 100%, but that tells me in her history that she's maybe self-sabotaged some relationships. And she was worried about that happening again.
Yeah. And I would assume, we'll find out in the reunion next week, but I will assume Nick can probably come forward right now and say, yeah, honestly, she really, started to annoy me, just repeating the same things over and over. I couldn't win. I was in a lose-lose with her, and you don't want that as you're about to walk down the aisle.
And it's a really big red flag, when you have that lack of confidence and that kind of sabotage and repetitive, and then the drinking on top of it. I know we don't see everything, and there's way more to the story than we saw. But I was very glad that he walked away. I think he made the absolute right decision in that.
So the next couple was the first one to take the altar in the finale yesterday, and that was Anton and Allie. And, for people that don't know, everybody on Love is Blind that does get engaged gets engaged on the same day. But for us, the viewers, we saw Anton and Allie get engaged in the first episode.
Yeah.
Literally 45 minutes into the first episode.
Exactly.
We already have an engaged couple. So I felt like we had no strong base for them other than clearly they just were saying all the right things to each other and then they get engaged and we don't see anything for the next 5 episodes from them because they got engaged so early. And then obviously they go to Mexico. I don't remember them having too many issues in Mexico, but it was when they got back to Denver was when we first saw, okay, what's going to be their issue? Because no couple just hits on all cylinders. It's impossible.
Exactly. Yeah. And I because of that, I had the least to say about them. And I didn't know until this season that was the way that they do it, that they do all the engagements. But they did something that I saw, actually, the last 3 couples we're going to talk about, they did too. I feel like they all put way too much stock in coincidences. Oh, your parents were immigrants. My parents were immigrants. You didn't speak English. You started speaking at 8. Your parents were divorced. You have a brother. My dad died of diabetes. Your son has diabetes.
Yeah.
So I think they were making these connections based on some similarities, but that really has nothing to do with how they're going to do in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, with them as a couple.
I feel like they were making decisions based on that.
And I guess when you're in, obviously you and I have never been on the show, but I guess when you're in that situation and all you have to go off of is, well, I got to see if I connect with somebody. And you're just literally going to try and find something, because everybody that goes, the 16 men and 16 women that sign up, every season, sometimes it's 15, they all want to be an engaged couple because they know opportunities can come from this.
For sure.
Some maybe are a little more serious about finding somebody than others are. But yeah, when you get to that point, you are probably grasping at straws to be like, oh, you were born on a Friday? So was I. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Really?
Instead of like, how do we communicate? And, what are we worried about? Those kinds of things. And on some things it's important. Like if you were heavily Christian, you're not going to match with an atheist, So there are some things that are really important there. But what I found about Allie and Anton is they both were avoidant of having difficult conversations. So they had these issues around finances. They had these issues around drinking. They had these issues around taking care of the house. And they would kind of poke at each other passive aggressively and then drop it. But neither of them was having those difficult, what do you think about drinking? What do you think about housework? What do you think about money? What's your history with money? How did your family handle money? So they just were totally avoiding these conversations and poking at each other. And at some point I'm like, she's not going to say yes to this. I think she was looking for someone. And when you saw her friends in the last episode at the bachelorette party, oh, he's just a truck driver, or, oh, he's not going to be able to give you the life that you want. And then her family was very ingrained in a non-drinking culture. Her mom said that many times. And so she was looking for someone, I think, who could meet certain criteria, and he just wanted to get married and make it work.
Yeah. And I think, again, it could be, it's very much the editing, but we saw a lot of comments come out of Allie's mouth that were very superficial. And, the label that she got online was she's looking for a sugar daddy, which, hey,
yeah,
if that's your game, if that's what you're interested in, there's plenty of men. Look, I don't think Allie's going to have any problem finding a man now after this show.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
smart,
and there are plenty of men that probably will slide into her DMs that have money and know exactly what she's after and don't care about it. So So I don't know if she's going to find somebody that's, a lifelong partner, but she'll have plenty of opportunities to meet men after the show.
Sure. And she would approach Anton with a lot of judgment. Her approach was very, very judging. I mean, I think that they both would do that. But I mean, ultimately, they just weren't respectfully discussing the difficult things.
Yeah. And it seemed like we all knew that it almost really seemed like you said, he just kind of put everything else on the back burner. He just wanted to be married so bad. And he had a hot woman on his arm. Yeah. And he's just like, would be great for me.
They were going to have a very difficult marriage if they made it. They were going to have a very difficult marriage.
And I don't want to sit here and attack people's friends, But when you heard the stories about Anton before he came on the show, and then you kind of see the company that he rolled with, I don't know, I don't want to call these guys out, but he just came across as wasn't ready for marriage. And this was a straight party frat boy that wanted to just constantly go out on the weekends and drink,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, one of the things I do a lot in my work is help people understand why they do what they do based on their history and their childhood. And he said he had to grow up with a lot of pain. It seems like he grew up with a, single mom, Russian, learning a new language. He had to grow up with a lot. And so he learns to just shut down and not have these discussions. And they needed to have, I don't think they would have made it anyway, because I think they just saw things very different, but they needed to have some of those discussions. And then I think he would have known that they weren't going to make it to the end.
Yeah. And when they started talking about these things, they just never got to any sort of resolution. Now, again, it could be the editing, and the editing just ended it for us, the viewers, of when they kind of just decided, because they have to show other couples. They got to focus on other couples. Yeah. So maybe they did, but it just seems like Allie seemed to have a good head on her shoulders to the point where I think she saw this isn't, because, I mean, when they asked her, when she was back in the room after she had dumped him at the altar and she was still in her wedding dress, what was her reasoning for getting rid of him? Or even what she said to him at the altar: the man I met in the pods is not the man that I feel has been represented post pods, essentially, right?
Exactly. And I think, the money, the drinking, the party, she even said that the healthy lifestyle and the eating. And again, every time you saw him, he was pouring himself a drink, but you don't know what else you're seeing behind the scenes. But the way they talked about their issues together was just very, very passive aggressive. And I'm like, they're never going to get anywhere with this approach.
Yeah. And you just knew he would be gung-ho about marrying her, but I was just never convinced that
I think he believed you get married and you work it out. And a lot of people believe that, and that's just not the way it goes. And right, wrong, or otherwise, I think she was more realistic about what that would look like.
All right, let's move on to KB and Edmund. I feel like I could do an hour on this couple alone. You and I are in the same boat when it comes to Edmund. In what you have said on your TikTok, I have said it on my podcast for weeks. I think this was completely exploitative of Netflix. I don't see how in the world. I know to get on a reality show, you have to pass a shit ton of psych tests and all these things and I can't imagine that Edmund was able to pass these psych tests. I don't think he ever should have been on the show. I think they knew he would be a character that would be perfect for their show.
Yeah.
But I felt awful for that guy. Not because of the way KB treated him. I actually like the way KB talked to him, because when they had their fights, and this, you don't see this very often, whether it's in the real life or whether it's on TV. When people fight and they argue, KB would say something, but then she would then follow it up with examples. I think most people just throw out generic statements, and she'd be like, no, you did this, this, this. I don't appreciate that. And I love the way she talked to him, but it almost felt like she had such a laundry list. I felt bad. Like, while he did do all those things, I was like, gosh, he's just getting punched in the face, like boom, boom, boom.
For sure.
But Edmund, I just think, I told you, he's a 15-year-old kid in a 30-year-old man's body. The way he spoke, the way he emotionally reacted to conflict, he clearly, kid grew up in the foster system. Like, the fact that this kid was in and out of the foster system should have automatically disqualified him, honestly, from being on the show. Not saying that someone who's been through the foster system can't thrive.
It's just so don't think trauma. Though he had so much trauma. And today, even, watching, and his teacher, and it was beautiful the way his teacher connected with him. He didn't have food, so you have like food scarcity. You don't have parents. You're not safe. I think when he talked to KB about how he wouldn't protect her, like if a man put hands on her, he wouldn't protect her. That man has probably seen so much violence and so much chaos that he can't handle being put in that situation. And I agree. Like, I don't know the testing rigor that they go through, but I did say shame on Netflix and this enterprise for that, because it would be very easy to tell that this would not be a good experience for him. And what I felt bad for him. I really did. Yeah. And it also set KB up for failure. Like, I was sad for her today when she was crying and she said, I hurt him, but there was really no other option given what he had to offer. So I think it really hurt her as well, or any other woman that would have ended up with him. So, other people are diagnosing him. I'm not diagnosing him. Different things can have very similar symptoms. We don't know the whole story. But I would say at the very least, he just had a huge amount of trauma. And kind of like I was saying with Madison, if I'm Calabria, my first question to Edwin would be like, what kind of healing have you done? Because as a therapist, I know it had to have been a ton for him to overcome what he described going through. So I think, the one thing I will say, I think KB did is when they would get into conflict and he would get overwhelmed, she would kind of keep pushing. And to the point, and I understand she's super frustrated, and I'm not saying I might not have even done something in the same situation, but you could see him become childlike in that situation. Like, I can't handle this conflict. And then you have, I just feel bad, like the scene we all know, where he's, they're talking about how they weren't going to be intimate. He's got to go back and watch that. And I just think this is going to be devastating for him.
I think in that situation during that scene, I was almost surprised that KB didn't signal to production, get me out of here. Cause there was times there where, he was raising his voice saying, I'm too fucking nice over and over and over again, while also crying, but then looking at her with some really weird eyes. Like, I was surprised she didn't almost get production involved and say, I don't feel safe right now in this environment.
And have you seen people comment that they've heard that she slept on the balcony that night?
I wouldn't be surprised, but no.
Yeah, a couple people have commented in my posts about that. I'm curious to hear, next week when we hear the reunion. But I think there were a couple scenes, when Joe was having his struggles on the vacation that were kind of dangerous, and that production, I think, should have stepped in. I mean, we don't know the whole story, but I think they were pretty dangerous.
Yeah, that first crash out by Edmund. I mean, I found him. He's very quirky, obviously, with the outfits and
the roller skating,
the hair pick. It's just. I mean, he's very quirky, but he's also just so childlike. And KB is just so womanly and so mature. I was just shocked that she was into him, which brings me to this point. And I think you brought this up in one of your videos. I felt like if she wasn't a social worker, I almost felt like she chose him because she felt like she has been down this road before. She has seen people like him, and she could, quote unquote, fix him. But you made a point about saying that just because he was emotional in the pods doesn't mean he's emotionally mature.
Yeah, I saw the moment where she made that connection. And as a therapist, you are a good listener, and you're asking questions, and you're empathetic, and you're non-judgmental. And he very vulnerably shared his foster story with her. And there was a moment where she said, I love your vulnerability. You're so emotionally available. And I was like, no, KB. He is emotional. He is not emotionally available, because when it came time for him to sit with her emotions, he couldn't do it. Yeah. If she had an issue, he couldn't do it. And so I think as a therapist, I could see myself in the past. I've been doing this 25 years. She seems like she's she's younger. She's new to the field. I could see you saying, oh, that person's emotionally available, when they're just emotional. And I did catch, and I hadn't caught this at the beginning. So she has a biological father who is not in her life. And she's dealt with the rejection and the abandonment from that. So a lot of times we find love in the ways that we received love as a child. And Edmund was not emotionally available like her father. And I think it was one, the social worker thing, and potentially two, a family of origin thing. Again, we get snippets of information, so I'm not sure what's what. Yeah. But, definitely that's something that you could look for if you had your own abandonment wound.
And he was I believe you said, an anxious attachment person, right? And that when he was getting that from her, that turned into, it was almost triggering for him to, that's how we saw his reactions.
I'm just going to speak in general. I mean, when you have trauma at that level and your caregivers are the ones that are hurting you, you'll sometimes almost have like a, I need you to need you, oh, too close. I need you to need you, oh, too close. So that's something that, down the road you might have seen with that, but he just so badly, like when they came back from the pool and the party, he just so badly wanted to know that they were the best couple. And, they were the couple that everyone was looking at, because I don't even think he needed to sleep with her. I think he just needed the reassurance that they were the best couple out there. But after that scene, I really wish she would have said, I can't continue this anymore. But again, that social worker piece, I think we'll find out more about that. But I'm really glad she made the decision that she did, because they made it look like she was maybe still into it up till the end. But I think she knew. I think she knew for a long time.
Yeah. And I think there's probably some production involved of, hey, we already got so many couples that aren't even making it to the altar.
I know.
Can you just give your answer at the altar so we can have at least 2 weddings on wedding day? Because there's
enjoyable then, to watch that. To me,
exactly.
No one's gonna make it. We know it. No one's gonna make it.
And I just think that because basically ever since the fight in Mexico, outside of one of the times they went roller skating in the park, even when they were up on the mountain, that turned into an argument. It just seemed like they were constantly arguing. I was like, why is KB continuing to argue and lay out everything that Edmund is doing wrong, which he was, but then, again, we would just get to the next scene and she was still with him,
You're a rescuer. And I think there's a reason why people are drawn to the field that we're in is, that you are a rescuer, and that's what you do day in and day out. And I think a part of her probably she said she dates potential, part of her, he's a good guy with a good heart and so many positive qualities, just not ready for a relationship. And I think she saw the good and wanted to keep pulling that out of him. But I mean, it was an uphill battle the whole time.
Yeah. Not only not ready for a relationship, clearly not ready for a marriage, a relationship. He's just, I mean, the best way to describe him, he is absolutely emotionally immature and just he's not an adult yet. He hasn't reached that. Because when we saw those reactions, you're just like, oh my gosh, he's acting like a child. He's acting like a child throwing a temper tantrum. The way he was speaking, the way he would ball up his fists, like it was almost like we were being transported to a high school kid. It was really bizarre.
Yeah. And something I forgot to mention when I introduced myself is I also have certifications in trauma. So if I'm working with couples, I need to understand trauma. And even if we've not had big trauma, we all have wounds, that come into play. Right. And so like his reaction to me just was very trauma induced reaction.
Yeah, for sure. And, at the end of episode 11, when they showed the preview for the finale, the biggest thing that I noticed was we clearly see Anton and Allie on wedding day. We clearly see KB and Edmund on wedding day. And they didn't have any footage when they were previewing the finale of Megan and Jordan on wedding day. So I assumed they didn't get married. And then they had ended episode 11 with them having their first fight disagreement about basically lifestyles. And then I thought episode 12 was going to pick up with them and them ending up breaking up, and then we were going to get to the 2 weddings.
Yeah.
But it was really weird that they ended the show like this, but I think I know why now. But 10 minutes left in the show, we haven't even seen Megan and Jordan. I'm like, okay, they're clearly not getting married, because it takes them 20 minutes to get to the place, put their dress on, put their suit on, talk to family. I'm like, they're done. So,
and I had heard that as well, but I wasn't sure, because someone said, oh, I saw Jordan's hand with champagne. And, people are way more perceptive on some of that stuff than I am, and they're looking into it way more. But I did, even though I didn't know about them, I hadn't put the pieces together. I just didn't think that Megan was going to allow it to go to the altar. I just had a feeling that she wasn't going to allow it to get there.
And in your mind, did you feel like she wasn't going to allow it because you were starting to get the impression that she was trying to convince herself she wanted or was ready to be a stepmom, when ultimately she wasn't?
Yeah, there were a couple things throughout the season that I struggled with. Like, she would bring up things about having concerns about meeting Luca and having concerns about being a stepmom, and at the end having concerns about their lifestyle more so. And I think he was trying to do a lot of comforting, like everything will be okay, everything will be okay. But he wasn't really, well, from what we saw, he wasn't really engaging in those conversations. What are you worried about? What are your concerns? How are you feeling? And these are big deals. And I thought about this. I think they put, like, not only Edmund was he not ready to be on the show, but you've got someone going blind. Wow. 4 weeks to make a decision on someone with a major health condition. And a lot of people who get divorced, they put in their paperwork that you can't introduce anyone to the children unless you've been dating for 6 months. That's a pretty standard thing to put in a divorce. So I just think that's really tricky situation to put someone in with a child, because of course, before you marry them, you want to meet the child. And then it's like, but is that the best thing for the child, to introduce them to someone who the odds of someone marrying on this show are very, very, very low.
The thing that I took from Megan, and obviously I think one of the other major issues was, I could just get the sense by watching the season and listening to Megan talk, going back all the way to the pods, that she has dated a certain type of man. And my guess is she has dated very wealthy men in her life, because she's very wealthy, seemingly, unless she's been lying about it. I don't think she has. I think it's been proven that Megan is very wealthy.
Yeah.
And she's probably dated wealthy men. She gets to Jordan's place. He's got a bed in the living room, and he's got one bedroom that his kid stays in. And that clearly wasn't the life that she was going to do. Clearly she wasn't going to move in with him, but she's talking about buying a $1.2 million home in Denver. And this guy is living in that apartment. I guess to him, he's like, this is jackpot for me. Like, I can up and root my life. Look at what I mean.
Go with it. Yeah.
Basically a sugar mama role for her.
Yeah.
But I think in the last episode, where we finally see her say for the first time, I want to still be able to go golfing. I want to go on vacations. I want to play tennis. And he's like, hey, you know what you signed up for with me? I've got Luca. That's just not something that, and that's an interesting dynamic, because while I think Jordan was telling her what she wanted to hear, like, don't worry, it'll be fine. I ultimately get the sense that Jordan probably would have felt emasculated. And I feel like Jordan, it would have bothered him a lot more that she was the ultimate breadwinner in that relationship, because I'm sure you've dealt with that, where the woman is the breadwinner and sometimes the male has a hard time dealing with. Not all the time.
Absolutely.
But in the beginning, men usually say, oh, that'll be cool. And then you get to a point where, wait, I'm
really not okay with that. Yeah,
really
I really don't feel okay with that. And that's another couple that I feel like put way too much stock in the coincidences. My dad
diabetes thing.
Diabetes. My sister had a dream. Your son's got diabetes. And I think it was another unfortunate thing. Like, I ultimately could have seen her ending up with Blake. I'm really glad she didn't choose Mike. Mike was her kind of go-to kind of guy. Yeah. But when he left, she was left with Mike, who I think she knew was not a good choice, and with Jordan. And the reason I didn't think they'd go to the altar is, I do think Megan is ready for marriage. I do think that she had the right pieces in place. That was just going to be such a drastic change. And so I feel like she was going to handle that in a very, very adult way and try to pull him aside and talk about it separately. So they did not go through the wedding. I mean, can you imagine Luca being at the wedding? Like, that would have been awful.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, and she said it in the pods, Mike essentially is who I've always gone for. Why not take a chance on this? And she even said it during the breakup about, hey, I thought maybe opposites attract, and maybe they don't. And in your dealings with couples, I'm just curious, do you think this is, because it just basically seemed like Megan, I don't know how much of an effort she put into, because some people say, hey, Megan didn't give it enough effort. Yes, they were absolutely opposites. She wanted the country club lifestyle. That's not him.
She wanted to travel. She wanted dinners. She wanted,
if she wanted to be with him
in the pods, he talked about those things.
Yeah. And if she wanted to be with him, she could have made it work, even though they were opposite, and maybe she gave up too early. In your dealings, is it tough for opposites to attract long term? Clearly they can do a short term thing, but long term, do opposites attract in your profession?
Yes. So I do think opposites attract, but do I think opposites are easy or necessarily the best pairing? No. I think we're designed to attract. First, we're designed to attract our unfinished business. So if we're more avoidant, if we're more anxious, we're designed to attract someone who's more avoidant. But does that make it easy? Does how different their lifestyles were going to be make it easy? No. And I think, at the end, she was honest in saying, I can't do this. It's too much. It's too much of a change.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, this is going to be a spoiler for next week, or maybe you'll see the story. It'll probably get out. It broke yesterday morning, which I'm sure the Sun, who reported this, sat on this, because the timing of it coming out the morning of the finale, when we know that Megan is no longer with Jordan. For those that don't know, at the reunion next week, it's going to be announced that Megan has had a baby since filming. This was filmed 18 months ago. She is in her new relationship, seemingly. We don't know if she's married. I don't think she is, because in the pictures that I saw, she didn't have a ring on. But doesn't mean it couldn't have been being fitted or something, So we don't know. We'll know more next week during the reunion. But Megan has had a baby. The baby looks to be no more than 3 or 4 months old, so it's fairly recent. It's with another man. It's obviously not with Jordan. So we find this out. And the reason that I find it interesting is because the fact that they ended this season with a couple that didn't even make it to the altar was interesting to me. And the last thing that we saw was the Megan and Jordan breakup. But literally the last line that Megan said before, I think the credits started rolling, before they started to do like a recap, was her saying, I don't know if I'm even ready to be a stepmom, and now I'm questioning if I'm ready to be a mom at all. And I think that was really interesting that they literally ran that as the last line of the season, because obviously production and the editing team knows
they knew
this is a woman that's now a mother, and it's a good transition. But when you saw the news, and it's almost like, well, I can't wait to hear more about, because like you said, you thought Megan was ready to be married.
I think she was ready. I really do think she was ready. And I think, unfortunately, kind of like KB, it was a situation that was set up for failure. Falling in love with someone and being sure you're going to marry someone at a month is hard enough. But with a child, I think that is so difficult. So I think she had a lot of guilt. I think she was feeling very, very, no one likes to hurt anyone, so she's feeling very, very bad. And I think that's where that statement come from. But I think that she to me was the most ready for marriage out of any of the cast members.
And we have since found out that Jordan and his ex-wife basically agreed Luca was not going to ever be part of this show. He didn't want him on TV. So now we're sitting here going, okay, I'm sure, like you said, it's hard enough to break up with somebody on the show. It just sucks. But in any relationship, breakups are tough. But now Megan has to, we don't know. We never got to see her time with Luca. It seems like it went well.
Yeah.
But in every interview, I saw Jordan was very complimentary. He said Megan was great with Luca. Luca loved Megan. Yeah. But it was also, maybe this thing dragged on possibly a little bit longer than it should have, because you're like, gosh, I'm so attached to the kid. And that happens a lot in relationships.
I think it happens a lot, a lot. And again, I think her heartstrings were just being pulled by the connection to her dad.
Yeah.
So she's got that connection. She's got a kid connection. You don't want to hurt people, don't want to hurt Jordan, let alone hurt a kid. So I do think she tried to make it work. And I appreciated the scenes they showed in was that episode 11, where you show them kind of, these are real problems and they're finally being addressed, because they're there. Yeah. Those are going to be problems, and they're just two very different people.
It's a huge lifestyle change.
Huge lifestyle
for her. Yeah. She would be I don't want to say taking a step down, because that sounds like insulting to Jordan, but she would be coming down in a way because of his financial situation, his living situation.
The different status. Yeah. And I think sometimes
status.
People swing. Like I'll see couples swing, like if they end a relationship and she ends a relationship with guys with tons of money and, you know, super high profile careers. And you're like, well, that didn't work. So let me go. And they go a little too far sometimes. Yeah. And I think that's where he's very laid back. He's very jokey. You know, yes, he seems like a very responsible and loving dad. It just like the pendulum swung too much. I did not think that couple was going to work. And again, it might have worked with, it was Blake, right? The guy that left. Yeah. Might have worked with Blake. But yeah, I think she was just trying to pull away from the Mike, kind of the Mike stereotype. And she landed just pendulum swung just too far.
It was interesting what Jordan said when producers were asking him after that breakup, when he was sitting there, and he said, you know, if I had a lot of money and I didn't have to work anymore, I think it would have worked between Megan and I. But I got my answer when she basically said lifestyle change wasn't for him. And I felt bad for the guy, because he probably feels like, my gosh, can I not date anybody that with any sort of status or any sort of money, because they're going to look at my life. But, you know,
and I think with how much money she had, like they're young, you know, like they could have made, okay, maybe you can work less and we can have more time together, and they could have worked that out. But she just pointed out so many differences, you know, like she wants to go to fine restaurants. He eats the same thing day in and day out. I think he's a lower, like, although he's very funny, I think he's a lower energy person. She's a higher energy person. You know, she wants to be out and about. He wants to stay home. She wants to talk about important topics. He wants to kind of just check out. Yeah. So I think there was just more than the money to that piece.
Yeah. I want to end it with this, something that you brought up in the beginning. I don't think you mentioned it by name, but it's something that I saw on your website in terms of what type of therapy you do. You do something called IRM. I had never heard of this until I read on your website. It's called Intensive Relationship Model. And I'm assuming that is when, well, I want you to describe it to me, because I'm kind of fascinated by that. What is when you take couples in and you do intensive relationship model therapy?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there are just a few types of, like, formal types of couples therapy that have scientific backing. Gottman is definitely the gold standard. And then a lot of people know of the Relational Therapy Institute, Terry Real's work. So I am very certified with both of those, and then have trauma certification. So what I've done is I've taken both of those and my own, you know, kind of anecdotal evidence, and I've melded them together. And honestly, out of COVID, I would have 5-6 couples a day in COVID call me and say, my marriage is not going to make it like tomorrow if you don't help us. And so I look to kind of mentors above me, and I'm like, oh, they're doing these 2-day intensives. So instead of doing a 50 to 60 minute session where all my couples are like, you know, they're just getting into it and the therapist is like, time's up. I work with couples for 2 days, and a lot of therapists are starting to do this now. I work with couples for 2 days straight.
When you say days, is that literally 8 to 5 Monday and 8
9 to 4, 9 to 3? You know, I think more than that is a little bit too much, but these are couples where one person, maybe there's been an infidelity, one person's kind of got their foot out the door, or they've got decades of communication issues, and they need a lot of help, and they need it now. And so I do intensives with those people. And at the end of the 2 days, we can have 90-minute follow-ups from there. But the IRM is my model that I've developed after doing this 25 years and putting those two methods and trauma together, and my kind of anecdotal evidence of what works with couples. So that's what I do every week.
Okay. This is interesting, because this is something that has come up when I dealt with Bachelor World and stuff like that. And I've had an opinion on this because everything has levels to it. Not everything is so black and white. And I'm just curious your take on infidelity in a marriage and or relationship, because there are people that say, you know, once a cheater, always a cheater. And you cheat on them once. If you take them back, you're only, you know, you're going to get what's coming to you.
Yeah.
I personally think, and this has nothing to do with personal experience, I haven't cheated on anybody since high school. And I think we were all allowed to cheat in high school. Yeah. We didn't know what we were doing in high school. You know, I wasn't in love.
It was a very long time ago. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but I think there's levels to cheating. if you're carrying on a 3-year affair, I don't think that's the same as I was emotionally cheating with somebody at work, or I accidentally had a makeout session and I shouldn't have. Is it wrong?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think a couple that is either married or have been together for a while can get past an emotional connection that somebody has maybe in the workplace, or accidentally in a moment of weakness kiss somebody else, versus, yeah, I was sleeping with another woman for 2 years behind your back. I mean, just, is that, am I accurate in that? Am I accurate in that?
Yeah. And there's all kinds of levels, because now oh, I went on a dating app, or
Online,
you've got pornography stuff that plays into it. So I would say probably 30 to 40% of my couples have experienced an infidelity, and that's why they have found me. And I mean, the thing is, and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to caveat it.
Yeah.
Once you dive into it, there's, again, I'm going to use that word trauma. There's always a trauma history behind that. That can make you have compassion for it. It doesn't mean you have to stay with it. It doesn't mean you have to put up with it. It doesn't mean it justifies it. And I want to be very clear on that, because my infidelity videos get a lot of traffic. It usually looks the same way. People come in kind of with the same story. It looks the same way. But yeah, there's levels. But, for one person, what a pornography habit may be so painful to another person who doesn't bother, but there's other things. But I mean, I would say the high end of majority of the couples I work with with infidelity, they do end up staying together. And I believe because we do it the right way, there is not cheating again. But I can see it, and I'll tell the person, I'll say, this is going to happen again. If I see it, I'll say this. Yeah. Because there's certain things you have to see that are going to show you that a couple can actually get through this. And when you don't see those things, it's not going to make it.
Yeah, there's no universal answer. It's a case-by-case basis, because if there is emotional cheating, that might trigger somebody way more than it would somebody else. And somebody who did carry on a 1 or 2 year affair, amazingly enough, it might not bother the spouse as much, and they might be willing to work through it and think that, and that person who did the affair might be able to get through it. It's not just yes, it can work, and no, it can't.
It's not. And I did one of my first ones was once a cheater, also always a cheater. And I said, no, if these things happen, I don't believe that to be true. But if you don't do any work on yourself and you don't figure out why you did what you did, then you're probably going to go back and do that again. And I've got some people I see who are just dead set on the physical part was the most traumatic. And someone's like, I don't care that you slept with her or that you slept with them. I care about the emotional content of what you shared with them. So it's different people with different things. I'll say the way that an affair goes down is usually very similar. And the way that we have to work through it is very similar, but people will feel all kinds of different ways about it. They'll have all different, this hurt me more than that hurt me. You don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting, because I think when it does come to cheating, and this is coming from a man, let me know if this is accurate in what you've dealt with, that for me, if I was cheated on in college, that was the last time I was cheated on. And for me, it was about the physical part. Like, I was so bothered by the fact, and I couldn't get it out of my head, of her being with another man. Whereas women take it as more of the emotional side, that this man is giving his attention.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Men usually have a harder time getting over the physical piece, and women usually have a harder time getting over the emotional piece.
Okay. So I'm accurate in that. Good. I'm glad.
No, you're accurate on that. And I did a video on that, men and women, and different reasons why they cheat, and different reasons, different things that affect them in cheating. So,
but we know, obviously different things can lead to cheating, like you said. But a lot of it usually does lead back. It's not because they were just horny in the moment. It goes back to usually deeper rooted issues, right?
Exactly. And what it usually is a background that shaped a person that doesn't ask for what they want or what they need. They kind of become like dutiful and silent. And then they build this resentment, and they find another person who's like a sympathizer. Like, oh, my wife or my husband treats me so badly. They find someone that's going to listen to that, but it's a fake relationship. You don't have kids together. You don't have laundry together. You don't have all those things that you have to put together, but it's usually someone who is actually, I know you see all the stuff about avoidant attachment and anxious attachment. It's usually the avoidant attachment person that actually cheats.
Interesting. And I think one of the other things, last thing in regards to marriages and couples and separations and divorces and cheating is like, obviously you've probably dealt with couples that have children, and we've seen it time and time again that people stay together because of the children. Obviously you would never tell people, you need to stay together. And sometimes it's situational where they almost have to, but we know that there are couples there that are in a loveless marriage, maybe a sexless marriage, a very abusive, whether it's verbal, emotional, or physical marriage, but they stay together because they have children. And again, it's a case-by-case basis, but what is your take, and what do you usually tell people who have a broken marriage but are trying to just stay together because they don't want to make their kids be parents of divorce?
Yeah, and I've really shifted on this in the 25 years of doing this as I've kind of grown and gone through some things and watched my clients go through things. You know, some of the most hurt people that I've ever worked with came from two intact parents who treated each other terribly. And so, you know, your kids are going to pick up on something, whether they have to go through a divorce, which is traumatic, or they watch a relationship function in such a dysfunctional way, they're going to be damaged as well. And I wish there was more research on that. Like, how do kids fare who stay in intact households where they're dysfunctional? And I see that, and it's almost more of a messed up message because, and I'm not encouraging people to get divorced. I'm here to help anyone who wants to stay married. But it's kind of a messed up message when, as a kid, you see, oh, these two people are together, but they treat each other horribly. You know, that's the way that it's supposed to be. And kids pick up on that, and kids, you know, that there's a part of the brain that's not functioning fully until 26 years old, but definitely until 10, where they can't separate the parents from themselves. So if the parent is unhappy, they're the reason they're unhappy. Or if the parent is unhappy, they have to be the one to fix the parent. So it messes with the kid in a different way. So I encourage people to make their relationship healthy versus, you know, I always say staying together happy and healthy is number one. Staying together miserable is not option two.
Yeah.
You know, separating happy and healthy is option number two.
Well, Amy, this was a great conversation. I'm glad I found you on TikTok. You can follow her on TikTok at Amy on Relationships on TikTok. She's given a lot of videos this season on Love is Blind season 9. Would love to have you on as a yearly guest when it comes to this season, and just have you on at the end of the season every year and just break it down.
Would love
great
it.
insight.
Thank you.
And you're also at Amy on Relationships on Instagram. So Amy, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you asking.
We'll be in touch.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.